Coming up, we'll be going over the biggest risers and fallers as we approach the halfway point of the 2025 season right here on Player Profiler. All right. Evan, you were sorely missed last week. I had to do some solo chuck action, some mixed results. I think the people will be happy to have you back in the saddle here. We are halfway through the 2025 fantasy football regular season. We're going to be doing our biggest risers and fallers for ourselves today. And Evan, as I'll ask you, as we kind of went through this exercise, how did you go about selecting these guys? Are these guys that have let you down? Are you just reading the market and kind of, checking out the tea leaves? What was your thought process here?
I thought about it from like an ADP perspective. The guys, at least on the fallers end, avoiding injuries. We don't want to talk about injuries. That's not a fun thing to discuss for a faller. So these are guys that have been healthy, but have drastically underperformed their ADP for various reasons. And on the other end, the risers have drastically overperformed their ADP.
Yep.
And these are mostly like talent evaluations or offenses that are better or worse than we expected, stuff like that. And we're, like I said, avoiding all injury talk. It's just talent and offense mostly.
Well, that's going to be a good way to go for it. I do want to shout out real quick. I am rocking the fan favorite Emeka Ibuka shirt for Halloween season. Evan, he was supposed to be ruled out last week, and I put this shirt on, and he was immediately declared a game time decision. So maybe we can recreate some of that same magic for week 8.
Yeah, that would be beautiful.
All right, let's kick things off here with our first riser. And man, this is a great pick, arguably the pick of the year, depending on your format. Let's get that clown out of here. Javonte Williams, running back for the Cowboys. Evan, he was so far off the radar that we still have him in a Broncos jersey. So what ended up happening? What's going on with Javonte Williams? Why was he your first pick?
So coming into the year, we weren't sure exactly who would be the starter in Dallas. We weren't sure if there would be a single viable fantasy running back in this offense. But we've ended up with Javonte Williams as the running back 7 in points per game so far, and the running back 4 in expected points per game. And it's not just his situation either. I think he's playing very well. He's currently 13th in yards created per touch. He's a bell cow in an elite offense. And as it turns out, he is not actually washed.
Yeah, there's no rehab like Dallas Cowboys running back room. He is up to RB8 on our Player Profiler seasonal rank. And just from an ADP perspective, he technically has been the best pick you could make in drafts. RB31, like you said, currently RB6, 7 range, depending on your format. And it's really hard to find a statistic that he's not top 10 and even top 5. And I won't rattle them all off for you, but, not just the volume stats like snap share, carries, targets, but also the advanced metrics, right? Rushing yards over expectation, EPA per rush, success rate. So he's kind of like the marriage between a volume workhorse and an analytics darling. He's doing it all on an offense that is only 26 in run plays total. So it's not like they're just giving him the rock game after game after game. And they're a highly explosive offense that's in the red zone at a top 5 rate.
Yeah,
He is
go
ahead.
It's also been a very injured offensive line, which has been an underrated story this year, but it hasn't really mattered. I think one big part of that is the Cardinals run game coordinator that came over to Dallas this year. The scheme has just been incredible, and somehow they've gotten around all of those offensive line injuries.
Yeah. Then there is absolutely room for improvement from the line standpoint, like you mentioned. This is an offense that's still gelling together because it's a new coach, new pieces at the wide receiver room as well. And also, here's an area that Williams can improve. He is 32nd in RB targets, which is 4th in the entire league. He's only 32nd in yards. So maybe a little bit more, if we can push the ball a little bit more down the field, maybe get him out as a runner or as a receiver, not necessarily just catching yards behind the line of scrimmage. There's a lot of avenues he could go. He is tied Herschel Walker for the most touchdowns in your first 7 games as a Dallas Cowboy. That's rare.
Wow, that is crazy talk.
Big talk. He is punching above his weight, and shout out to anybody who, he was going drafted, and he was probably a waiver wire for some leagues, but he was definitely in the mix just because we know this, it's just a Cowboys offensive ecosystem you want to be a part of. Kind of like our next guy here. Rico Dowdle was my pick for my first one. And this one should come as no surprise. He's somewhat the talk of the town right now. You know, he's monster rushing games he keeps ripping off. He is up to RB 26 on our player profiler seasonal rank. And probably just the hottest rusher on the planet right now. We don't have to recount too many of the statistics because he's been dominating headlines as of late. But we got a good glimpse into the future with this last game with Chuba Hubbard coming back. They alternated drives, and here's how they fared. Dowdle had 17 for 79 and a reception for 17 yards. He averaged 4.7 yards per carry. Chuba was 14 for only 31 yards and 2 receptions for 24 yards. So 2.2 yards per carry there. And I think that's going to be I know Chuba's coming back from injury, but I think that's how this offense is going to operate going forward.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's going to be a straight 50-50 split. This has been a successful running offense for the past couple of years. The offensive line is quite good, and the scheme with Dave Canales is quite good as well. And we've seen the explosiveness from Dowdle, currently second in true yards per carry, which takes away those explosive runs, and sixth in explosive rating overall. So yeah, this is a running offense that we want pieces of, but at the same time, with the 50-50 split, there is certainly a limited ceiling as long as both are healthy, but we've seen the insane ceiling that's possible when one of them goes down.
Yep, and that's always going to be a possibility. And there are multiple ways you could look at this as well. He's playing on a 1-year deal, which makes this a contract year. We love contract year players. So he's either going to be, especially if we're looking long-term, right? He's either going to be the leading running back on another team next year, or he'll stay in Carolina and probably win that 1A job. Now, I don't think Chuba's going anywhere because he's a captain. He's still a good player. And he did just sign a 4-year contract in November. So he's going to stick around. But this is an offense that wants to keep the ball out of Bryce Young's hands as often as possible, limit his attempts, limit the amount he has to be shouldered. And that means a heavy ground game. And you have to have guys that can handle the load if you're going to be giving them that kind of work. And I think Carolina has it in Rico.
Yes, definitely. Not a whole lot to note there. It's like I said, low ceiling play for now, but we know that both are solid flex plays, I would say, going forward.
Yep. Yeah, you're going to be getting there's like you said, there's going to be weeks where, one guy, you can start him with full confidence as an RB2, maybe even RB1. And a lot of the other times you're kind of going to have to see who gets the touchdown in these situations. But you know what? There's probably 20 backfields you could say that for right now. So you can't really be too upset with that.
Definitely.
Yeah. Let's go from a part-time share to a guy who is a full-time stud. This is going to be your first wide receiver pick, Jackson Smith-Njigba. Great choice.
Yeah, man. I mean, this season has really been all about Jackson Smith-Njigba. He's currently the wide receiver 2 in points per game and expected points per game. And if you look at his player page on Player Profiler, I cannot recommend enough. Just go to that page, and it's honestly pure porn. It's first in basically every category that we care about, whether it's target share, air yard share, all of the per route stats. He's first in. It is just incredible. He is an elite receiver that can do it all, and he's paired with a quarterback that's willing to just pepper him with targets, and he's not scared of these tight windows either. It's really just a perfect marriage that we've seen this year.
Could not ask for it more if you were a drafter. I've got a couple fun things here. JSN, who is up to wide receiver 3 on our seasonal ranks with room to grow, he was drafted as the wide receiver 14. He was sandwiched in between Tyreek Hill, T. Higgins, Mike Evans, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Terry McLaurin. So you had a 1 in 6 chance there if you were trying to go wide receiver of getting somebody who wasn't just playable, but a great pick. So shout out to all the JSN believers out there. I consider myself one of them. I know you are as well. He is at a historical 4.27 yards per route run. That is almost a half a yard higher than the single season highest mark set by Steve Smith in 2008. I've got another fun one for you. We'll do a little trivia time here. Where does JSN, who leads the league in receiving by almost 200 yards, rank in total routes run by a wide receiver?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'm going to say 46th.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, it's 40, but just the fact that you were within 6 and you guessed in the 40s is incredible. He is behind Jalen Tolbert, Brandon Cooks, and Trey Tucker. So this game is tough to take sometimes, but God, he's doing it in so many ways. He came into the league as a projected slot wide receiver, and he's done nothing but obliterate that take in every game that he's played. He leads the league in deep receptions and deep yards. And most importantly, Evan, he brought back dunking the ball over the goalpost, which has always been a personal fan favorite of mine. And it's been a
Absolutely.
lost art.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's been
Uh,
lost to time. And thank you to our King JSN for bringing it back.
it does.
He really is one of these guys that can just do everything. Like I
Mhm.
mentioned that before, but you just can't overstate it. He's like Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. I think you have to put him in that tier
Yeah.
as a guy
Yeah.
that can literally do it all.
Yeah.
He
He is
can
an
rattle
elite.
off huge explosives after the catch as well.
Mm.
The back shoulder fades. He can go up and get some balls
Mm.
downfield as well. Like he's burning guys. He's burning fast corners downfield,
Mm.
and that's not his game, but he can do it. It's it's just crazy impressive.
I think he's the best example we have of a receiver taking up his game in a linear progression every year. You don't see that too often. You see guys explode onto the scene as their rookie year and then kind of go up and down. You see guys maybe not perfect their craft until 5, 6 years in the league. He is taking his game up with every game, with every month. It's been a lot of fun to watch, and he's got the right ecosystem to do it in as well.
Yeah, for sure. It's been super interesting because of that extremely low pass volume offense, but it
Mhm.
just doesn't matter because he's that good.
Yeah, he is doing the work of 2 or 3 guys, and that's everything you could ask for in a fantasy asset. Let's move on to a guy who's kind of in an opposite situation, I would say. But I'm equally is a strong word. I'm very high on, and I'm especially high on a second half for him. And that's going to be Zay Flowers. Now, this is probably going to be a head scratching pick for some people. He's up to wide receiver 21 on our seasonal ranks. This is a player that has not finished higher than wide receiver 31 since posting the overall wide receiver scoring week one. But let me lay this out for you guys. Lamar's been out. That's been the biggest crux of it, right? But even before that, Lamar had a tough couple of games against the Lions and then against the Chiefs. So you're talking about more or less maybe a month without full Lamar Jackson. And that's maybe leaning on a crutch a little bit, but that is a big part of it. He has 8 or more targets in 4 of his 6 games and 72 plus in 4 of those 6 as well. The counting stats are lower with the quarterbacks he's been playing with, but what's made him a big riser for me is that I think he's broken out of that mold of more of a gadgety player that he was used as those first 2 years, and his role in the offense has taken a big step up. He's 5th in yards per route run, 8th in target share, 5th in route participation, 7th in design targets. They are making him a piece of the offense as opposed to Lamar just scrambling to buy time and find the open man, which is what he did a lot last year. And if you look at the entire wide receiver landscape, I just don't think there's anybody who's more primed to go from what they've been used as to what they will be used with the team coming out of a bye, Lamar getting healthier, and really just a lack of explosion and pop from anybody else on the receiving side of the offense.
Yeah, I love this call. As you mentioned, Zay Flowers is getting more of like the true wide receiver targets this year,
Hmm.
as opposed to in the past where he was kind of in like a Marvin Mims range where it
Yeah.
was either a screen or a deep shot downfield. This year, he's up to a 31% first read target share, which
Mm.
is a really good mark. As you mentioned, he's 8th in target share. I like Zay Flowers going forward as long as Lamar can get healthy. Hopefully, he's back this week because if
Yeah.
not, it could start to get really scary in Baltimore if they fall to 1-6.
Yeah.
But Zay Flowers is an awesome player that can kind of do everything you want a receiver to do. And I am worried about the lack of passing volume in this
Mhm.
offense. It does make him somewhat. It increases the variance
Yeah.
from week to week for sure, but there will be some giant boom weeks to come with Lamar.
That's my hope so, and they're kind of a sneaky bet to still make the playoffs because their schedule is
Yeah.
pretty favorable. They play the Bears, who are up and down right now, the Dolphins, who are in free fall, the Vikings, who are beatable, and then of course the Browns, Jets, Bengals, Steelers, Bengals again. That's a stretch of games where if this team can fix some of the issues that they have, and that's easier said than done. I think they can return to form pretty quickly, and that may not take the league by storm, but for fantasy production, I think it could be great for Zay. So hopefully, like you said, that's the difference between him finishing as the wide receiver 14 and the wide receiver 24, something like that. So
Right.
pray for Lamar to get back soon and to return to form.
Yeah, one stat that I think illustrates his development this year.
Mm.
Last year he was at 3.1 first read targets per game. This year he's up to 5. That's a really
Mm.
big jump.
That is taking it up a notch. That is what we're talking about, right? Becoming a focal point of the offense instead of just a product of the offense. And that's where you see a lot of these guys elevate. JSN's he's the best example of that right now. Zay Flowers, kind of a poor man's version of that same kind of leap. So feel good there. Hard to feel better about this next guy we're going to talk about. And I love it because we get the innocence of his picture in there. We get his nice little pledge fraternity picture shot there of Tyler Warren, tight end for the Indianapolis Colts. Truly just impossible to find a negativity here. So what made you want to talk about Tyler Warren today?
Well, he has drastically outperformed his draft position. He was going around the tight end 10, I believe, in drafts. I don't have the ADP in front of me, but it was around that number. And he's currently the tight end 3 in both real points per game and expected points per game. And he leads all tight ends in receiving yards as a rookie, which is super impressive. Currently have him ranked tight end 4 rest of season. And I would argue that he is one of, if not the best yak threats in the NFL from day one, on a surprisingly explosive offense as well. That is just a fantasy goldmine this year.
It is. You mentioned, and I'll come in there with it right now because I had this towards the later part of my notes, but he's only one of 2 players right now with over 400 receiving yards and 250 yards after the catch. It's him and Jamar Chase, which is pretty funny because he kind of is having a Jamar Chase-esque rookie season just with the impact he's making right out of the gate. He is up to tight end 4 in our seasonal rank, and that's his floor. He's taken 169 tight end snaps, 60 out of the slot, 32 out wide, and 22 snaps at fullback. And when you watch his highlights, which obviously anybody's going to look good in their highlights, but he's got 25 of them already through 7 games. You see it in his production. I've seen him score a touchdown on a deep post, jet sweep, tight end pitch, shallow crosser, you name it. He is finding a way to get it done. He's my rookie of the year, even over, I'm wearing an Emeka Ibuka shirt. I'm a Buccaneers fan. I think Warren has been spectacular, leads the position at targets per route run. And this is an offense that they can hit you in a lot of different ways, but they really, you're seeing weeks from Alec Pierce, you're seeing weeks from Michael Pittman, you're seeing weeks from Josh Downs. It is the Jonathan Taylor and Tyler Warren show week in, week out.
Yes, it is. Yep. And they're building their offense around him. And I think that is what they should be doing because he just looks incredible. Like I mentioned, the best yak threat in the NFL, I would argue.
Yep, rocking and rolling. And he was a sure bet to make this list. This other guy, I have to admit, it was a big surprise for me. Dalton Kincaid, tight end 7 on our seasonal ranks right now. I always have to find a way to surprise myself at least once during a show because I don't want to do take lock. I don't want to do guys that I just like. I want to have credentials built up with the audience so they know that I'm talking about a player that I'm really not that fond of right now, but he seriously has surprised me this year. He's a player that the general public and even myself were ready to stop taking seriously as a top tight end or even the projection that he could be one. Now, I know it's early on in his career, but we see these guys come and go. I just didn't think he could break through in the big dog rage. And while he hasn't quite done that yet, he has salvaged his fantasy value and looks to be one of the better picks at the position. He's got 4 tight end 1 finishes, 3 in the top 8, and nothing worse than tight end 18, which with all the variants we have this year is very consistent. He's not being hyper targeted and he's not dominating red zone looks, but he is being used in a way down the field that I think compares favorably to other guys at his position. He's doing top 7 in air yards, top 7 in ADOT, deep targets, number 1 in yards per route run, explosive rating, and fantasy points per route run. How are you feeling about Dalton Kincaid?
Yeah, it's been a great year for Kincaid, definitely. I am a little bit dubious just because he's outperforming his expected points per game by almost 3 points currently. And that's just a result of touchdowns. Like you mentioned, he's not getting a ton of red zone targets, but the ones that he has gotten have almost all gone for touchdowns. So we should expect that to regress a little bit. But at the end of the day, he is first in the 2 most important efficiency stats that we look at: first downs per route run and yards per route run. So I can't talk too much shit. He is clearly a good receiving tight end. And hopefully we can see the route percentage go up. That's kind of the one last thing to unlock him as a true difference maker, is that he's got to run a route on more than 64% of Josh Allen's dropbacks. And it just looks like that the Bills don't want to commit to that for whatever reason.
And you know what? I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's probably the biggest shoe left to drop with this offense Josh Allen has not really had success through the air like I think he's capable of doing, and I think this offense is capable of doing. He's only got one game over 255 yards, so if it skews the other way, there's potential for Kincaid to even get any more. And when you watch these games, there's a heavy. We expected going into the season, right? They have a bunch of guys who feel pretty even as far as ability goes, and we expected there to be rotation, but it's almost purely through the wide receiver standpoint. So Kincaid has kind of been the consistency. His consistency has come in finding ways to stay involved. And I know it's easier to say if that happens, but if they've lost 2 games in a row here, and it could have been 3 if they did not, if the Saints didn't go full Saints in that game. So James Cook is regressing slightly. I just feel like this is the kind of team that knows how to turn it on, and I feel like he could be a big benefactor of that. I don't think he's going to ever punch up to Trey McBride, Tucker Kraft, Tyler Warren, those types. But if you drafted him ahead of, Colston Loveland, Njoku, Evan Ingram, Mark Andrews, TJ Hockenson, honestly, even Travis Kelce, you're looking at, we've talked on previous shows about that tight end 8, 9, 10 doesn't do a whole lot for you. But if you can get the tight end 6 and you drafted him as the tight end 14, now you're talking about salvaging something.
Yeah, for sure. At the end of the day, he does kind of fall into a big tier of tight ends where you don't necessarily know which one to start every week. But if you have Kincaid on your team, I think you can confidently just roll him out there every week, and he's going to go boom bust depending on if he scores a touchdown. But that's the tight end position. That's totally fine. Hopefully we see a little bit more explosiveness out of the Bills offense coming out of the bye. I think that could be a big factor too.
They are playing from behind in the division. They're playing from behind in a lot of these games now. So hopefully that is a big step forward. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will tear into those unfortunate players that have tumbled way down the fantasy ranks.
Oh, working out so important for your health, for your sex life, for everything, just everything in general. I perform better across the board, podcasting, you name it. The last thing I need to be thinking about is, creating a new workout routine. That's why we have Fitbod. It prevents you from plateauing. It's so customizable, and that I have one super strong shoulder and one kind of weak shoulder. And yet the Fitbod app helps me customize my workouts to improve the strength and the endurance. I go in, my physical therapist is like, I can't believe you're doing this many. And I'm like, I know. Can you believe this? And he's like, yeah, this is crazy. So level up your workouts. They have over 1,000 demonstration videos. And join Fitbod today to get your personalized workout plan, which includes 25% off, or try the app for free for 7 days. Go to fitbod.me/player, fitbod.me/player, FITBOD/player for 25% off for 7 days free.
You really got to leave it to Matt for talking about improving your sex life and talking about how well his performance is going within the same breath. That's why he's the GOAT. So well done there, Matt. We'll try and keep that same energy. All right, you guys want to hear? It's not easy to feel positive in fantasy football. It's super easy to skew negative. So let's get to those guys that have ruined it for me, ruined it for Evan, ruined it for everybody else. Some by their fault, some not by their fault. And we'll kick it off with probably the easiest target of the season right now, and that's going to be Chase Brown, running back for the Bengals, down to RB 34 on our player profiler seasonal rank. This was a guy who was going around the RB 11 range, and he was probably also the guy that I saw the most reached on in drafts. Didn't happen terribly often, but as far as the gap between his ADP and where I saw him go sometimes, he was a shiny object that a lot of people wanted to get a part of. So talk about Chase Brown a little bit and why he's having the season he's having.
Yeah, I was one of those idiots that was chasing him up the draft board for sure. And I ended up with Brown on my face. He's currently the RB 33 in points per game and the RB 26 in expected points per game. All the efficiency stats are really rough. He's 50th in yards per touch. And right now, Samaje Perine is actually starting to take a lot of the rushing work from him too. So, at the end of the day, I do think if Joe Burrow was healthy, that this would be an okay pick, but it wouldn't have crushed because of the O-line. The O-line has been a complete disaster. The run blocking rating, the yards before contact, all that stuff looks really bad for them. And right now he's at like a 70% opportunity share in a Joe Flacco offense when we were hoping for last year. What he had was a 90% opportunity share in a Joe Burrow offense. So that's just a massive difference. And it kind of explains everything for why he's this disappointed fantasy manager so much.
Yep. He has not had one thing go right for him. And it's very rare outside of, he's got 0 injuries to himself. The quarterback comes in. I mean, we talked about Javonte Williams being the best pick you made. This is probably the worst pick you could have made in drafts. Only Trevion Henderson and Caleb Johnson had a worse ADP to ranking differential right now. And it's really hard to put rookies in the fallers category just because they're rookies. The coaches are, there's a million reasons you could pick them apart, and you're not going to see many of them on here throughout the season. But this is the easiest one to process of all the guys we're talking about. The whole team was kind of a faller in certain ways, but with Flacco turning back the clock, I'm having a hard time seeing the kind of game he had last week repeat itself throughout the season. I don't know what the Steelers were doing. Nobody knew what the Steelers were doing. If you listen to any podcast on Friday morning, everybody just kind of led with a deep exhale and said, what the hell was that? We have a 2-game sample size here with Brown and Flacco together. He was the RB18 and the RB20. And let's say he averages that for the rest of the season. That's still a sizable fall off from where he was being drafted. And that's if he can get that going. And like you said, there's already varying factors eating into him, from the other running backs to the bad offensive line play. Their schedule might be the determination here. Let's see here. They'll never be up in enough games to run the hell out of the ball. It's just not going to happen. And if they do, that might be more Samaje Perine than it is Chase Brown. But they play Chicago, Pittsburgh, New England, Baltimore twice, Buffalo, and Miami. So if he starts catching like 4-ish dump off the game, he might retain flex value. But otherwise, I think I'm ready to turn the page on Chase Brown for this year.
Yeah, that's really the only way that he can get back to a startable range for us is just the receiving. Over the past 5 weeks, he hasn't seen more than 11 carries in a game. And we shouldn't be expecting those carries to go for more than 3 yards per carry, roughly, because of the offensive line is so bad. He has been catching more balls recently from Joe Flacco, so that's a good thing. But at the end of the day, there's a very limited ceiling here for Chase Brown.
Yeah, that's the biggest part about it. You're getting about as lowest floor as you can get for a running back without having the ceiling that you want to risk sometimes. So really, really tough one to take here. Let's parlay that into another one that's kind of a sneakier one. I think people might be surprised to see him on biggest fallers of the halfway season, but for me personally, he is, and that's going to be David Montgomery. He's down to RB27 on our player profiler seasonal rank. Days before the game against the Buccaneers, Dan Campbell said they needed to get David Montgomery more involved. Well, they tried 16 touches for 39 yards, and you contrast that to the game Jahmyr Gibbs had, and I think that's a really good snapshot of what's going on this year. I said before the season that if someone was going to get stiffed in this offense because of all these ascending pieces, new coordinator, what have you, offensive line may be taking a little bit of regression, although they've been better than I think we projected them to be. I pegged Montgomery as that guy. I didn't think that Jameson Williams would, use the buddy system with him and kind of fall in that same lane, but he's the RB18 right now. And I can imagine that Monty drafters are not feeling that love because half of his games are flirting in the RB4 territory.
Yeah. It's been really rough outside of that one game versus Baltimore where he ripped off like the 80-yard touchdown.
That game is 38% of his overall points is that one game.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That does sound about right. Last year, he was at 14.9 expected fantasy points per game. This year, that's down to 11.5. So that's 2.5 points that have been chopped off of his usage. Sorry, 3.5 points that have been chopped off of his usage. And that's all just going straight to Jahmyr Gibbs. The Lions still lead the league in running back usage, but instead of it being like a 50-50 split, it's more of a 60-40 split. And that's really all the difference you need to turn David Montgomery from a running back 2 into a running back 3.
I'm glad you mentioned the usage because that's really is like the only thing you can point to in particular as to what the difference is here. Last year, they were almost exactly even in touches per game. Gibbs at 17, Monty at 16. This year, Gibbs is up to 18 and Monty's down to closer to 12. And you're seeing Gibbs even eat into the red zone work. Monty had a couple games where he got 3 or 4 red goal line rushes apiece. Otherwise, it has been all Jahmyr Gibbs in the end zone. So probably the best way to frame this is, you thought you were getting classic David Montgomery when you drafted him at RB21, and instead you're kind of getting Tyler Algier, who was down at RB56, and that's those thin margins in these drafts. And Tyler Algier is not even having a bad season for somebody drafted at RB56.
Yeah, man, that's pretty sad when you put it that way, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah, that's a tough go for it here. There's a lot of tough goes to go around, and your next one I'm very excited to talk about. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. DJ Moore, wide receiver for the Chicago Bears, down to wide receiver 37 on our seasonal rankings. This was probably, I don't have a do not draft list, but this had to be the guy that was on the least amount of my teams for a wide receiver coming into the year. So why do you have him on our biggest fallers for the day?
Well, because he's currently the wide receiver 48 in points per game and 51st in expected points per game. When you look at the advanced stats, it doesn't look a whole lot better. He's currently 77th in target rate. That is just abysmal. I actually dropped him down to wide receiver 44 in the rankings right before this show. And I think this is a lesson that design targets are not enough for fantasy success. You also need to earn real wide receiver targets, which Rome Odunze has just completely monopolized this year and stolen them straight from DJ Moore.
When you start hearing a player talked about in the Deebo Samuel role, and he's a 5-6 year vet, and you've never heard anybody suggest that for him, that's kind of when I feel like you're on the thinnest possible ice you can be. The run game's playing incredible. The defense is playing really well. There's just not, they need out of this passing attack right now. And if they do turn to that passing attack, like you mentioned, they're turning to Rome Odunze. And why wouldn't you, the way Rome's playing? I mean, we waxed poetic about him earlier in the season. This is a wide receiver who was going as early in round 4 in leagues. And like you said, he's wide receiver 48 right now. He's missed no games. His target share is abysmal. He's up there with Malik Washington, Marvin Mims, Sterling Shepard. And the heat's only going to get hotter for him because this is the team that drafted 2 top skill players in the draft, and they have flashed. It would be one thing if they've been playing Burden and Loveland and we've seen them struggle, but that's not the case here. We're watching Moore get all the opportunity. We're getting all the snap share and not doing anything with it. So is there a possibility here pretty soon that they start turning to these rookies more and this gets even worse for DJ Moore? It's certainly in the cards. And kind of lost in the mention here is that there's been a lot of inconsistency with Caleb's game. He looked actively bad against the Saints, which is why the run game has been so important. So maybe Ben Johnson tries to rein him in a little bit. So you might be looking at passing game volume coming down, maybe getting closer to those Bryce Young levels. So there's just, I don't know what you hold on to here if you think that DJ Moore can turn the corner.
Yeah, I don't see any hope. I think you make a great point with Caleb Williams. He's been up and down in every game. Every game you see clear flashes of insane brilliance, but then you also see like 10 throws that are just way off and nowhere close to the receiver. I don't see how it gets any better for DJ Moore. I think Luther Burden is bound to take more of these design touches away from him as he gets more involved in the offense. So I think, I moved him down to wide receiver 44 today, and that might be too high, honestly.
Yeah, it's a tough look. You mentioned that about Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams plays like it's an older brother whose mom is making him share the Madden controller with him, with the little brother. So you have like one guy who's probably ranked in like the top 100 Madden players in the world, but his mom keeps making him give the Xbox controller to his like 9-year-old little brother, and you just see him spamming the X button. Like that's kind of what I feel like when I watch Caleb.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good metaphor for that.
All right, we've got another guy here who is, this week in particular, is way down there as far as public opinion, performance, physically, he's not doing well. And that's going to be Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver for the Jaguars. He's down to wide receiver 25 on our player profiler seasonal ranks. And this is someone who was going pretty high up there. He was the wide receiver 8 at ADP. And that's got to be a big punch in the gut. And it's been the same old story with him every single week, struggling with big time drops and he did it on an island game, which made it way worse, unable to make catches over the middle or in traffic. And the worst thing happened to him, worst thing you could possibly have happened to him. Travis Hunter broke out. He has the most routes run of any player over the last 2 weeks, and he's looked very good in both these games. He is 6th in first read target rate. I guess all those commercial shoots with Trevor Lawrence are paying out. I mean, where do we go with Brian Thomas here?
Yeah, like you mentioned, the drops. That's what it all comes down to. I saw a tweet last week that he had 11 drops in the game.
Yeah, that was an NFL record, some might say. That sounds like a fantastic tweeter right there.
Yeah, it was fantastic tweet. He is at wide receiver 11 in expected fantasy points per game, but wide receiver 38 in actual points per game. And it all comes down to those drops that we mentioned. We should, I mean, if you look at the numbers, drops are like the least predictive stat of all time. So we should expect that to change, but it looks like he has the yips over the middle of the field. Every target is just right through his hands. And when the per route stuff isn't very good either, 53rd in yards per route run, 52nd in first downs per route run. So I think that this might just be maybe not a lost season. That's not the right word, but just a super disappointing season. And we got to get on board, even if the usage is still there. It's looking like it's just not going to happen this year.
It does not. It's incredibly disheartening that the Jaguars were down so big so early in that last game. And he wasn't. And that happened in the week before too. And he was able to actually put up that encouraging performance that we were looking forward to against the Seahawks. He actually had a nice week 6 stretch there where it looked like the production was starting to churn. Their bye week is coming up, which is pivotal for first-year head coaches, and they get the Raiders coming out of the gate after that. So, if there was ever a time to supercharge your season, this is when it's going to be. He's a low-end wide receiver 2 in our ranks, but I think the good news for him, if there is any, and there's not a lot, is that his role is not in danger. He just needs to step his game up. And he's a first-round talent. He's got a quarterback that can deliver him the ball, even if he's not always playing on his game. The opportunity is going to be there for him, but he has to step up to the plate, and he hasn't so far through 7 weeks.
Yeah, for sure. There is still a chance that he can just bounce back and be right back to the low end wide receiver 1, high end wide receiver 2 that we drafted him to be. But at the end of the day, he has to do it. And we got to see it before we can feel comfortable starting him every week.
And that's a good transition to somebody who I don't think I felt comfortable starting any week since week 1. TJ Hockenson, is this the first repeat name on Risers and Fallers? I believe that we had a body bag segment for TJ Hockenson earlier in the year, and things have only gotten worse. He's down to tight end 18 on our Player Profiler seasonal ranks, which is a pretty tough fall for somebody that was going in that borderline elite tight end range. He was tight end 6 at ADP going into the year. Evan, is this play that bad that he deserved a second mention on the show?
I think it absolutely is, because when people were drafting him, they were taking him like he was the next guy after those elite tight ends. And he is like, he's basically cuttable in almost every redraft league. Currently the tight end 23 in points per game, the tight end 10 in expected points per game, which is due to last week where he got 3 red zone targets and didn't convert any of them, by the way. He's currently 33rd in first downs per route run, a very predictive metric. And like you mentioned, ranked tight end 18 rest of season. At the end of the day, he is the third option in a very volatile passing offense. That just doesn't get it done for fantasy. I think he has clearly regressed as a player, and the offense has clearly regressed as well, which we probably should have expected. He has performed a little better with Carson Wentz under center, but that's not going to last much longer.
No, there's no reason it should either when you've got Jordan Addison storming back from his suspension. I mean, 8 targets, 6 targets, 12 targets last week. Those first 2 games looked a little, I'm going to say Mickey Mousey from where Jordan Addison was getting his production, but then you tie it together with this third week that he just had against the Eagles. And I mean, he is very clearly the player they wanted him to be. And so when you can give the ball to Jordan Mason, when you can throw the ball to Jefferson and Jordan Addison, there's not just an odd man out. Everybody else feels out, and for good reason. So got a matchup against the Chargers this week coming up, and then the Lions, the Ravens, the Bears, the Packers, the Seahawks, the Commanders. Pretty tough stretch, if you ask me. I know that the Ravens are reeling a little bit, but all those other defenses are very tough in the secondary. Very tough for opposing quarterbacks. So not a lot to be optimistic for TJ Hockenson.
Yeah, at this point, he's just a streaming tight end from week to week.
Yeah.
Hope that he falls in the end zone.
Yep, and holds on to the ball.
Yeah.
I know that was a big come on, guys, but you got to hold on to the ball if you're not the Chiefs, you have to hold on to the ball. That's how this goes.
Yep.
All right, let's see here. We've got one last one here, and this feels. I can't believe this is already happening, but it's happening. And that's going to be Justin Fields, quarterback, New York Jets, an epic free fall happening right now. Now, I do have to preface this entire segment we're about to have on him with saying Tyrod Taylor they just came out today that he was week to week with a knee injury. So that does throw a little bit of wrench in the chains, but we can take that out of the equation for now because Justin Fields has done nothing but give us reasons to make him make the falling list. So when your owner is coming out and their owner knows as little ball as any owner knows, he comes out and says it's the quarterback's fault you're 0-7, even if it 100% isn't. I think the clock is expedited. He is falling down to our QB 31 in our player profiler seasonal rankings. And just to give you the journey there, he was projected as a top 5, top 6, top 7 quarterback for almost every week 1 through 5. And he's already down outside the top 30.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, if he's starting, I do think that he is worth a thought of you starting him in fantasy just because of the running. But man, this passing offense has just been abysmal, especially the last couple of weeks. One stat that's super interesting, I don't know how important it is, but it's very interesting. So we get our data from FTN Fantasy. They chart interceptable passes and highlight throws. Justin Fields has 0 of both. No interceptable passes, no highlight throws. He's just not trying anything. Instead, he just opts to take the sack, take the guaranteed negative 10 yards. That's his strategy.
It does not feel like there's any adults or accountability in this organization right now, but I will say for people that to piggyback off your point there, they brought Justin Fields in and we thought he was going to be the starter for the year while they try to evaluate what their team is, right? We knew he wasn't long-term, but I think what got lost in the sauce is that you can't appropriately evaluate your offense when he is your quarterback. Yeah. So we had a couple of games with fancy rushing upside, but I'm not sure anybody, even the biggest Justin Fields haters, expected 3 games of less than 50 passing yards. And all of those were blowouts. So Tyrod Taylor is not looking much better, 10 for 22 last week, 2 interceptions against a bad defense. But, if Fields doesn't lose this job in the coming weeks, it's coming at some point because the organization clearly already wants to move on for him for the right or wrong reasons. And that could lead, where this is all leading, Evan. It's leading to a full circle moment where you mentioned at the beginning of this segment that he can't be completely written off if he's going to be the starter. Week 15, 16 fantasy football playoffs are going to roll around. Tyrod will have been banged up, and Fields will be projected for 18 points against the Jaguars week 15 and 18 points against the Saints week 16. And we'll all have to wonder why we keep doing this.
And there's no way that he scores those 18 points. He's either going over 25 or below 5, as he's done in every game this season. He has 3 games over 25 points per game. And then in his other 3 games, he's below 5 points.
Wow.
It's absolutely insane. There's never been a more volatile fantasy asset than Justin Fields.
God bless him. God bless America. God bless fantasy football. All right, let's wrap up the show here real quick with a little Thursday night football preview as we do every week on the show. We've got the 3-3 Vikings visiting the 4-3 Chargers. As of this recording, the Chargers are -3 favorites. -3.5 favorites, and the over-under is 44.5. After last week's fireworks, which, Evan, you were gone, and of course, as tradition, split my picks. I took the under, but I nailed the Bengals covering. And that means the over has hit 5 out of the 7 Thursday games. So the defenses are not showing up for these. Let's start with maybe fantasy implications. Is there anybody you have an eye on this week in particular that would be worth a note?
I think that the must-start players in this game are Jordan Mason and Justin Jefferson.
Mhm.
You can plug them in with no worries. Just, you have to start Jefferson, of course.
Mm.
Mason, big workload against a pretty bad rush defense. The Chargers pass D is pretty good though.
Yeah.
And then pretty much everybody else in this game, it just depends on your team. Kamani Vidal, I would lean towards sitting him, but a lot of people are going to have to start him, and that's okay.
Mhm.
Same thing with Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, Lad McConkey, Keenan Allen, Rondé Gadsden. How I would lean on these guys is start Addison, QJ, and Lad, and
Mhm.
then sit Keenan, Hockenson, Gadsden. But
Yeah.
all of those are just team dependent.
It does feel right. And, this is this Vikings second defense is really going to try and rebound from getting clobbered in the secondary last week. And I don't like Brian Flores defenses the week after they just got pummeled. They usually bounce back pretty strong. You mentioned the Chargers passing unit, which is 13th in EPA against the pass right now. But prior to playing the Colts, who the Colts have put everybody in a blender, they were 7th. So we're talking about still a pretty damn good unit playing at home. It's going to be a toughie, but for me, and I agree with everything you said, I'm going to take the over, and I'm actually going to take a Vikings cover here. How about yourself?
Okay. I also had the over, and I had the Chargers covering here.
All
I
right.
believe in Justin Herbert against Brian Flores.
There you go. That feels like a move to me. That'll be it for our risers and fallers halfway through the season. I want to thank everybody who's been with us so far and everybody who will be coming for. I do want to get us out of here on one thing. If any of these players that we put on the fallers list score this week and have a nice game, that does not mean that they are all of a sudden not fallers. All right. It's a long season. Stay out of my comments with these. This guy got it wrong. He's a fraud, blah, blah, blah. We're playing for 14 weeks. Come check in with me at the end of the season. If I'm still wrong there, I'll buy you a beer. Does that feel right?
Yeah, absolutely. No notes. These guys, all the followers we listed, they suck at football, and you should drop them.
Drop them. Give me no trades. Immediately drop. All right, Evan, where can the good people find you?
At Evan Ringler FF on X. Besides that, all my work is at playerprofiler.com and on this YouTube channel.
Excellent. Yeah, make sure you guys are checking up everything we have going on with the Player Profiler team. As always, I'm Chuck Bass. I'll see you guys Sunday morning at 8 a.m. for the Start Sit Show. Cheers.